Hi, I'm Mia Friedman and welcome to No Filter. Andy Gourley is a 47-year-old pastor, former accountant and a fan of downhill skateboarding, whatever that is. Fairly self-explanatory, I guess. Every year since 1997, he's been attending schoolies on the Gold Coast. But he's not there to reclaim his youth or to be a toolie or even a droolie. He's there to hand out lollies. Specifically, he's there to hand out red frogs. 20 years ago, after noticing a lot of bad behaviour at schoolies, Andy founded Red Frogs. Anywhere that young people gather in large groups and get a bit smashed, you'll find the Red Frogs. They walk around Surfers Paradise and Byron Bay and Bali during schoolies. They're at music festivals and orientation weeks at unis, and they'll be handing out red frogs, crashing parties, cooking people pancakes, and making sure that anyone who's had a bit too much to drink or a bit too much to drug gets home safely. They are the eyes and the ears of schoolies. So how did it start? How does it work? And what are the best tips for parents who are about to send their kids off to schoolies? When Andy came into the studio, he gave me all the answers and many, many bags of red frogs. Andy, how old are you, first of all?
I'm 47 this year, so I'm officially a toolie, coming close to a droolie, so getting to that age.
How did you start hanging out at schoolies?
Well, I actually did 2 schoolies weeks myself. I repeated year 12, so I could do 2. But then back in the day, I started working, studying accounting and running some youth clubs through my local church for skateboarders. And I started these skateboarding clubs through Brizzy. Yeah. When they got to year 12, they went down to schoolies, and I foolishly went down to look after them. And, just saw what schoolies had become. And then from there, it's just been stuck there ever since for the last 20 years.
What did you see that first time you went to schoolies as an adult?
Yeah, I couldn't believe how much it grown. It was like 30,000 on the Gold Coast, and there was like stuff coming off buildings, and like a bottle hit my car as I was driving down Surfers Paradise, and I was walking along the footpath, and a full tinted VB smashed a metre from me. It's almost like you needed a hard hat walking down Surfers Paradise. And then I saw these Japanese tourists that had just flown into the Gold Coast in the middle of Schoolies Week, huddling their kids just in fear of hundreds and hundreds of schoolies everywhere. So back in the day, there wasn't as much control, wasn't as much other things for the schoolies to do. So it was a bit out of control, and there was a lot of fights and violence involved. It
sort of peaked in its debauchery around that time. When was that?
Early 2000s, 2001. So I think we had 2002 had 7 stabbings in Cavill in the first 2 nights, and that's because of some toolies and hangers-on. It wasn't the schoolies, but all these gangs came down and had these fights, and that's when the police really reacted, and they tripled the policing numbers the next year. And then the Premier's sons came down the next year, and then we got a lot of resources in that following year, which is sensational. So all the fencing came in and stages and resources, and since then it's been a very, very well-managed event.
Can we go through a few definitions? What is a toolie?
Yeah, toolie is hangers-on, classic uni student. Wanted to relive the glory days of schoolies. They're like 2nd or 3rd or 4th years. Come down to crash the party, or locals that try to crash the party that are clearly too old as well.
And are they looking to pick up chicks, or are they just wanting to party? Are they more predatory than celebratory?
Absolutely predatory. Very much take advantage of drunk young people and to really crash their party. And a lot of them are there, with not good motives at all. So, in fact, probably 80-90% of arrests are the toolies at Schoolies Week. So police do a really good job creating barriers between the actual schoolies and the toolies themselves.
How did Red Frog start?
Well, I just, with my skateboarders going down there, I went to, I saw what they were doing in this building, and I felt really sorry for the hotel manager, and I just said, do you want a hand at Schoolies Week? And before I could finish saying those words, she literally escorted me into her office, started to make me cups of tea and scones and free food, and she was saying, yes, please, can you come help our building? Because her building was like 400 17-year-olds in one building, and there's more alcohol and grog stacked up in every room than you could chuck your nana at. And then there was more other substances floating around that you care to mention, and like 2 security guards and 1 hotel manager trying to keep a lid on this. So she was just going, yes, please, any volunteers at all, we'd love your help. So we went back to our church in Brizzy, and we screen printed up all these shirts. And back in the day, we were called Hotel Chaplaincy, and went straight back down the coast. And we just started crashing parties, just going like floor to floor, finding kids passed out in stairwells and dragging them back to their units. And we found one kid passed out in the lift with a bucket on his head, so we took him out of the lift so the lifts could close again. And then
community service.
Pretty much. And then we found them down the beaches, passed down the beaches, so we'd walk them home so they wouldn't get attacked by the toolies and droolies. And then they're out in the verandas, trying to...
What's a droolie?
A droolie is the really old toolies. They're the really old guys that stare at your legs and stuff.
Like the
scary
seedy
dudes.
guys.
Seedy old dudes, down there. So then we just basically started doing that. But we were having trouble getting into rooms. It'd take about 10 minutes in the hallways talking to them about who we were. And so I went to my mate Lukey. I went, mate, it's got to be an easy way of doing this.
But what do you mean? What was the problem? You mentioned your church and the chaplaincy. You're a pastor.
Yeah.
Now, what is a pastor? Does that mean you're a priest?
The minister of religion, so definitely work for a church doing pastoral care duties.
Because you don't look like one, Andy, can I just say? You're wearing like you're wearing a Red Frogs t-shirt actually, but you're wearing this like black cool t-shirt, you got a goatee, you kind of, I was going to say groovy, which makes me sound about 100 years old, but you are kind of groovy.
Yeah.
You don't strike me as a man of God.
Well, I'm also a downhill skateboarder and an accountant, so I'm like a pastoral skateboarding accountant, a bit multi-personality, but...
You're all the things. You're a slashy.
Oh, there you go. Then also I'm the chaplain for the Queensland Reds Rugby Union, looking after all the rugby boys when they...
And what does looking after mean? Like talking to them about God?
Well, it's more pastoral. It's really meeting people where they're at any level. So for me... say with the sporting group that I look after, a lot of the boys are sort of faith background, some are, and I look after them in that way with any faith needs. But for a lot of the guys, it's just when they're having...
What would be a faith need? What's an example of a faith need?
A lot of players, when they come into squads, looking for local connection to whatever denomination they're from and getting connected in their communities and also... just running sort of small groups, and some like doing a bit of prayer before the games and all those sort of things before their big matches. So provide, and also a lot of just sort of more counselling, really, just more that, when it's contract negotiation time where the manager's saying one thing and partner saying the other thing, coach is saying one thing, they're looking at what's the best decision to make, just a bit of an ear to listen to and just someone to bounce something off that's not connected with the club, not got any vested interest in financially in what they're doing, but just, that third party they can come to. But it's a bit of a new school third party, and I guess the Red Frog thing too is we also look after the fellas that, when they celebrate a bit and make sure that, we get them home safely late at night and all those sort of things as well. So that's a lot of the work we do.
Because I suppose, certainly at this time in our history, there's an association between religion and judgment. And there's a sense of if I am a minister or whatever, or I'm religious, I'm going to judge you and I'm going to judge your lifestyle choices, which might include drinking before you're 18 or whatever it happens to be, sleeping with someone or, going home with someone. But that's not your remit, is it?
No. And
you don't strike me as a judgmental type.
No, not at all. And that's the big thing. There's so many legends out there. Like we have the Salvos work with us, which are a bunch of absolute legends in our Aussie culture and, really demonstrating a lot of the good work those individuals do in so many areas, in mental health, homelessness, community care, to schooling, education, nursing, right through the fabric of our Aussie culture. And it always says that the crook stuff when an individual does something really crook, and they should be, the law should come down on them, but then there's thousands and thousands of absolute top Aussies out there doing some good stuff and crashing parties is our thing, I guess.
So you back to the hallway. You had your T-shirts and people didn't like the chaplaincy thing. Is that right? No,
they actually didn't mind that at all because, again, it's really approach. Aussies can pick like a tosser, and someone that's, doesn't have, has got agendas. They're really sharp. They'll pick someone a mile away. And if you're genuine, you're there just looking after dudes and proving yourself, that they're very inviting into the party. So that wasn't more the thing. It was more just not knowing who we were, I guess, not having that time to find out who we were. And I guess that's where for us it was we found this random box of red frogs at this counter rocked up to this big party, and we literally opened the door and they just went, "Red frogs," and they just jumped on this box, just flogging heaps of them. Then this fella got on the phone to his mates unit downstairs going, "We got frogs," and they're coming up from downstairs. So all those parents out there that have told their kids don't take lollies from strangers, it's not working too well, that one. But we got into every party. Just
it's like an icebreaker.
Yeah, like an icebreaker pretty much. And we did try some other lollies back in the day, but we found the red frogs dominated, and particularly the Allen's red frogs too. We tried other ones back in the day, but the Allen's dominated. And so we went to every corner store on the Goldie and Woolies and Coles, whatever. We found about 80 kilos of these froggies, and they just got us into every party like straight away. It's
and what did you find when you got there?
In the parties, well, this is a big thing. I mean, a lot of the thing with our culture is the pre-drinks. It's the pre-drinking.
Prees.
And prees is massive. The price of alcohol and just getting in those random rooms or guys on verandas drinking on those verandas that you know, maybe leaning over those verandas with chairs right next to the railings, and kids passed out in random bathtubs and bedrooms where they're lying on their back, where we get the medical, the ambos to them to assess them out to see whether they just need to go down to triage or the hospital, or they can just sleep it off. So really, our guys became the eyes and ears the police and ambos never had in those rooms, where a lot of the pre-drinks and a lot of the issues do happen. So having the eyes and ears up there, and a lot of our workers are 18 and 25-year-olds, and because they're not mum and dad, not security, you know, not
they don't wear a uniform.
Yeah, and they just wear the red frog shirt, and we got free food. They're just all over it. And they also tell us a bit more stuff too, where they're a bit afraid that if I tell the police this, will I get in trouble? If I tell...
What kind of thing?
Well, things like, you know, we get called, we have a Red Frog hotline, which is a national hotline, and last year we had 9,343 call-outs on a Red Frog hotline, and we get called. Now, most of them are for random acts of pancakes, as we do random acts of pancakes, the Red Frog pancakes up in the hotel rooms and stuff like that. But we do get
How does that work?
Well,
Can I have one?
Yeah, we got an app actually. You can actually order pancakes to your room, and it gets us up there putting food in them while they're drinking, because if you heard the term eating is cheating, and they think that if they don't eat, they can get drunk faster, but the alcohol can get in your bloodstream a lot quicker, and then it can really do some damage and alcohol poisoning. So just putting food in them is a really just basic safety thing before a big night, or they go out on a big night. So we do close about 100,000 pancakes over schoolies now. And
who makes those?
All our Red Frog teams. Yeah, we have 1,500 volunteers looking after 70,000 around Australia in 17 locations, and they become expert pancake makers. And even with the Red Frog pancakes in there too, they love those as well.
Red Frog pancakes?
Absolutely, a few froggies in there.
Wicked.
Yeah, not too shabby.
So what time do prees kick off at schoolies?
At schoolies are different between the states. So for Queensland and WA, it'll be from around that 6 o'clock to about 8 or 9, and then they'll kick out to the entertainment, and then they'll kick back about 12 or 1. Before your New South Wales Victorians, they'll pre to about 11, and then they kick out to the pubs and clubs because they're 18.
So they'll pre at 11 or until 11?
Until 11.
Starting at 6 as well?
Yeah, about 6 or 7, yeah.
So then they'll go to the pubs and clubs at 11, and then they come back and drink. And then do they all keep drinking till the sun comes up?
Yes, traditionally they had done in the past, but we saw the last 2 years have been very different. We've seen a big decrease in consumption of alcohol and the length they drink for, and a lot more non-drinkers in the crew, or guys that choose to go DESI or designated sober guy or for the night. And there was a big shift the last 2 years. In fact, the last 2 years have been the healthiest we've seen in 20.
What do you put that down to?
It's a few things, like we think. There's been a big health revolution come through where they're thinking about their carbs early, and they're almost swapping beers for boost juices these days. And there's a lot more really young athletes there that are really worried about their training regimes and very dedicated, very committed. There's also a bit of a mindset shift in a few where they're thinking, well, maybe spending $80 waking up with peas and carrots on my shirt and wondering why my head feels like a semi-trailer hits it isn't the best option for me. So they're sort of waking up a little bit quicker. And then also there's a real social justice thing in this generation where they're looking after their mates so well, where they'll actually choose to go sober to look after a mate, which is just phenomenal. We haven't seen that in decades. So we're back in the day, they'd let Jono sleep it off on the beach, cover him with sand and watch
Shave
the
off
sea.
his eyebrows.
Yeah, shave off his eyebrows and drawing him a Nico pen.
Yeah.
Now they're picking Jono up, walking him to the first aid tent, staying with him for 3 hours and walking him home. And we're just so impressed with this generation.
Phenomenal.
It
Like
really is.
all the shit that Gen X has put on millennials. And what is this Gen called? Gen Z, I suppose.
Yeah.
They're a lot more caring than we ever were.
Oh, absolutely. And really, they care about others more, and that's a high value to them as well. So looking after each other. So they're calling earlier, they're intervening in things earlier, and there's just a bigger percentage of ones not drinking as much. So we've never played so much up in hotel rooms as last year. We're just flat out because they just got bored and just wanted to hit cards and do random stuff. So it's been really interesting culture change in there. Now, for the ones that are drinking, are still drinking pretty hard, and it's almost
What are they
like,
drinking?
it depends on the trends. Every year there's something different. Every year there's some new product that's higher in alcohol content and cheaper. So
they're the two considerations. How can I maximise my
and
alcohol?
Whatever the trend is as well. So whatever the flavour of the year is, and that changes year to year. Vodka's been a pretty standard one right through. And that puts a lot in hospital for us. But
do girls drink differently to boys?
Actually, their culture's changed too. Probably the last 10 years, they've really tried to match it with the boys, the ones that are drinking, and female drinking culture has really changed. But because their body is a little bit different, and the capacity, what they can drink, is a bit different. Probably about 70% of our alcohol intoxications are female these days. And
when you say alcohol intoxications, is that when you got to go to hospital?
It's either go to hospital or have the paramedic check you out or go to triage. So there's all different levels of what they. And last year, like say 2014, we had about 702 that we dealt with, but last year was 554. So a massive drop. So which is a really, really good trend that we're seeing throughout Australia wide, with the exception of Bali. Bali bucked the trend of all 17 locations last year, but again, it's just a unique place.
Is that because it's easier to get alcohol legally when you're young?
Yeah, correct.
And is that why people are going to Bali?
Absolutely. Cheap and easier to get alcohol and less restrictions around that. We've got very high codes of conduct in Australia, a lot of support mechanisms and processes and accountability for the pub and club owners that do a pretty good job on whole in managing what they do. But over there, it's a bit of a different situation. But we work really well with the local authorities, and they work with our teams brilliantly over there because it is a bit of a culture shock. Aussies, unfortunately, aren't the best behaved when they're overseas sometimes, and we don't put a really good reflection on what really Australia is like. So, but it's good for us to be there to look after our own crew that are running amok and getting a little bit silly. Which you can do when you're that age, because you don't, particularly I reckon for the fellas too, we don't grow a brain till we're 30. We take ages to really grow up. And so I think for some of those that they can get into trouble and out of their depth a little bit as well.
You talk about there being less alcohol consumed in the last couple of years. What about drugs? What changes have you seen over the years in terms of drug consumption?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have seen an increase. That's gone the opposite direction, and that's probably increased about 20% a year for us. And still compared to alcohol, it's minor. Alcohol by far in Australia is still our drug of choice, but drugs is increasing. And it's more your eckies and pingers and stuff like that, but it's scary stuff, like watching the eyes rolling in the back of their heads and the convulsing and the mix with alcohol. But the most common drug use we see at schoolies is experimental, where someone's already drunk and someone goes, here, try this, and they just do it because they're off their chops anyway, and it gets them into all sorts of trouble. So it's a big thing with our high school education seminar. We do talk to 52,000 in high school education seminars leading to schoolies, and we do a lot of training in looking after your mates. If your mates had a few, you got to look after them. Don't let some predator give them something and then they get in all sorts of trouble. So probably the majority of drug use at schoolies is experimental, but at the same time, it's a lot more out there now.
What's a pinger?
Oh, ecstasy. Yeah, ecstasy.
What about caps? Is that MDMA?
Yeah, a form of it, yeah. Can be, Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah, so again,
I'm so old, I don't understand drugs.
Not a drug expert in that area, and there's new names that come up to drugs all the time.
I've heard the term caps a lot.
We don't see a lot of the harder stuff like your ice and all that. That's very, very rare that we'd ever see that at a schoolies or uni parties or things like that.
Well, that's good news for the parents.
Yes, absolutely.
It's reassuring for the mums. Tell me about the girls. You know, what trouble do they get into, and what are the sort of the issues that you worry about most with the girls that you see?
Yeah, look, we've sexual assaults has been always an issue for us over many, many years, and we've come up with a lot of early intervention strategies to decrease the opportunities for sexual assaults. And our walk home teams are number one. So we do over close to 5,000 walk homes over schoolies, and we've got an app now that you can download, the Red Frog app, and it has got a walk home button on it. So if you're a bit scared about walking home by yourself, or if your mate's got the old wobbly legs and doesn't know which way home is, you can hit that, and we'll come with a walk home team to get you back to wherever your place is. So we had 744 call outs on that, but did over about 5,000. And we actually put a GPS tracker, one of our walk home teams last year, and they did up to 21 Ks a night of walk homes.
Oh my goodness.
Should be called like Red Frog Biggest Loser, I reckon, at that time. But in that...
I imagine they'd be pretty slow walks too.
It's double the distance as they're going all over the place. But in that, though, we do train our teams. If we see, say, a young girl, for instance, almost being dragged down the street by a fella, our teams will go up to the bloke and go, "Oh, mate, good job looking after her. We'll take it from here, buddy." And we'll take it the rest of the way home. And the amount of time we've got her back to her girlfriend's units, and they've gone, "Oh, thank you so much. We lost our mate at the beach party. We didn't even know who that guy was." It's just incredible. So we're not shy in intervening. We're not shy in, if someone's really struggling, to assist whoever it is to get them home safely, to make sure that, nothing really, hectic does happen. And that's really reduced a lot of the sexual assaults we've had to deal with.
Is sexual assault a big issue at schoolies?
I think it's an issue in every whole culture, and where alcohol is there. And this is the thing, alcohol is the epicenter of just about every major incident that we come across. And there's no such thing as safe sex when you're off your chops and drunk. And with that too, the whole area of permission goes out the window when you're too drunk. So it becomes a very, very complicated and very dangerous area. And that's a real big area in high school education we target. So if someone is too drunk, you cannot take advantage of them in that state. You are entering into such a grey zone and a very dangerous zone, and you need to respect each other. You need to look after each other during this time. So there's a lot of education we do around that. But again, alcohol is really the key factor here, and that's probably 90% of all the incidents alcohol-related in that area.
So I'm a parent. I've got my kid going off to schoolies. I'm absolutely terrified. Give me some tips. What can I do?
Okay, here we go. Well, firstly, do your research too and look at locations you might prefer as a parent that for your young person to go.
So my son went to Byron Bay because there were no high-rises. And there was a schoolies a few years ago, was it maybe 2012 or something, when a couple of kids fell off balconies. It was just tragic.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, that is a big one. Drinking and balconies don't mix, and it is very dangerous with too much alcohol. And one of the big things for parents that we've really targeted is don't oversupply your young person with too much alcohol.
Wait, what do you mean? Parents are sending alcohol with their kids?
Oh, yeah. Massive.
Really?
In the past, massive amounts. And because a lot of philosophy is, at least they know what they're drinking. But the problem with that is you buy it and then they'll buy their stash. And because they've got an oversupply, their mates come, "Hey, give me a few." They'll be super generous. But if they've had to pay for it themselves, someone tries to flog a couple, they go, "Rack off, I've paid for that." So again, the oversupply...
Teach them the value of alcohol.
Absolutely. It's the oversupply where a lot of issues do happen. So our tips to parents is whatever you're thinking, divide by 4 and go lights, not heavies. And so really decrease...
Okay, lights, not heavy, so light beers.
Correct, yeah. Look at the content, because alcohol's really changed, and alcohol culture's changed at schoolies heaps. Like we used to rock into rooms back in the day and it'd be all empty beer cans, and like they make these beer walls out of the empties and pyramids and like maps of Australia made out of beer cans with like Tasmania included and stuff. But now it's like all your Smirnoff Double Blacks and your UDLs and all these mixer drinks, and a lot of them are like 6-7%ers, where a heavy beer is 4.5. And because it doesn't have like grog anymore, they're knocking back these lolly water drinks. It has this drop effect where it just creeps up and drops them. And so, again, it's what they're drinking has really changed. So it's really important you don't oversupply too many heavies, but look at the alcohol content.
So heavies are mixers, are they?
Well, heavy drinks is, I think for me, anything over that 4.5 mark and around those 4s and going lighter, it means you've got to drink more to get the same effect, but your body has enough time to say, no, it's time, instead of this creeper effect where the alcohol hits you at a big level and it just drops them and puts them in dangerous situations.
All right, so try to make sure they're not on a high floor in a high rise. Don't load them up with too much alcohol. Divide it by 4.
And a big simple one is buy slabs of water. Alcohol dehydrates you. Just buy some slabs of water, send it with them, or buy them a Woolies card if they're going interstate so they can go down and do a big shop. And send some food with them. The amount of rooms you rock into and it's just all beer and one half-eaten apple in the fridge. Stock up with some frozen lasagnas, frozen meals. Because if you're not eating during that week and after 7 days of drinking, you can really collapse in a heap. But they need to be eating well and drinking water, and that actually makes a huge difference.
I picked up, I did the airport run for my son and a couple of friends, and it was very funny. One of his mates came out with 5 kilos worth of bolognese that his mum had cooked, that he took in his hand luggage.
That's so good.
And someone else had a big cheese board, and they were like, all the mums made food. Okay, so channel your energy into sending food.
Correct.
Because they are also incredibly cheap and they don't want to spend money on food.
Exactly.
Or actually anything.
Yes, and they're sort of at that age where they haven't really worked out how to do that yet.
Yeah.
Outside of, Maccas and HJs.
Condoms? Send condoms?
Yeah, look, definitely. And that message has gone through really well with all the school education. It's very accessible. All the health agencies are there. But again, even with that too, there's no such thing as safe sex when you're drunk. And again, it comes back to the alcohol.
Yeah, you're not going to put it on properly.
You're spot on. So with that, it's the amount of alcohol you drink that puts you in that high risk area.
That's really interesting. There's no such thing as safe sex when you're drunk.
100%. So you can have all the knowledge, all the resources around you, but if the alcohol's too high, all that goes out the window.
Andy, that's a bloody great life lesson to add to my arsenal. I haven't added one for a while, but I really like one. I've got the what I said to my son and all his friends, that when you're out, be the one who holds the drunk girl's hair back, not the one who's trying to pull her pants down.
Spot on.
And make sure she gets home okay. But I like that there's no such thing as safe sex when you're drunk.
Just on that too, we need a hair tie sponsor for schoolies too for tying girls' hair back. So if any hairdresser out there wants to donate a couple of thousand of those, we'd love them. That's a number one tool we take out on our teams.
Hair ties.
Hair ties, yeah. Fantastic.
That's fantastic to
You
know.
can put your sponsorship logo on it too.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so what else can parents do?
Yeah, I think, look, we also encourage the schoolies to do check-in Tuesday, to say, hey, let your mum and dad know that you're okay. And,
once a week?
Just one. Yeah.
Stop it.
Come on, it's schoolies, give them a break and don't be a helicopter parent.
Really?
You've got to trust yourself. They're coming of age and, they've got to learn some, life lessons as well. But at the same time, it's about doing your research well, stocking them up. At the end of the day, it is up to them. But also knowing...
Andy, do some parents come on schoolies?
They actually, you'd be surprised. They come down and do a cook-up for the whole room midweek, and invited by the schoolies themselves, and just to put a bit of food in them. And it's
schoolies know what's going on.
Yeah, they love it. That's it's no dramas at all, and it's actually invited by the schoolies themselves. But again, we have a 1300 number which parents can ring, and parents can ring us during the week and go, look, little Johnny, little Mary's in this building, and then we'll go up and do some random acts of pancakes for them and drop some red frogs off for them. But we won't say mum or dad sent us. They'd be very uncool at schoolies. But again, we do get parents calling in and emailing in, and so if they are too worried, they can give us a yell and we can drop in and just see how they're going. We won't let them know what's happening, but at least they know we're there.
So how do you guys are all volunteers? Who funds you? Who pays for this supremely awesome service that makes every parent sleep a little bit better at night?
Yeah, absolutely.
Who do we have to thank?
Yeah, definitely. Well, there's some obviously big companies. Look, Allen's is number one. We wouldn't be the Red Frog crew without the Red Frogs.
How did they hear about what you were doing and get in touch, or you approach them, or?
Yeah, absolutely. We were going for a couple of years, and then media really got onto us, including a lot of overseas media. We were getting calls from BBC World News in London, and then a German doco company came out, and even this article in South China News Sea Post and all these different things, and so it started to get on their radar a bit, and talk shows and different things, and about this lolly phenomenon that's helping schoolies and these big drinking things. And then so we, as the branding went, because our first year we went through 80 kilos, then it was 220
that you paid for,
then we
just
paid
out of your own
for,
pockets.
440, then 880. As soon as we get up in the tonnage, we really did need support from the company, and Allen's were great. They came in and sent one of their reps up to have a look at what we do, and just walked around and couldn't believe how much of a superstar the kids were just falling over these Red Frogs, and how much they love the actual I guess that connection point between the frogs were, I guess, the tool to getting our guys into position to do really good work and look after these schoolies. So they saw that, and then they started to donate the tonnage and take that pressure off our budget in the product, and now they sponsor 24 tonne a year, close to 3 million frogs a year in all our projects. So we have 7 tonne in schoolies, another 7 in
7 tonnes?
7 tonnes, yeah. That'd go, if we didn't ration it, it'd go in 3 days.
How do you ration it?
Oh, we only limit the bags to team leaders, and they have 2 bags a day. That's it. Otherwise, they'd go in half an hour. It's amazing. They're just ravenous at Schoolies Week, Schoolies. So, and then universities, another 7 tonne there, another 4 tonne of music festivals, and our skateboarding events as well. So it's about 24 tonne a year. So, and then we have companies like Optus that sponsor our Red Frog hotline and do a charity plan for us there. So probably 60% of our budget is corporate, 30% through the not-for-profits, all the churches and not-for-profits that help us out, and only 10% government. We keep government really low so we can still bash them in the media if we need to, if they're making dumb decisions. So, but again, we really appreciate that support as well. So we try to keep a really cross-section support, so it's not just one entity that we're relying on, but it's a whole community can contribute into what we're doing.
Andy, thanks so much on behalf of parents everywhere and kids, schoolies. Thank you so much for all the work that you do.
Cheers. We love crashing parties.
Thanks for listening to No Filter. How great is Andy, and how great are the Red Frogs? I loved hearing about that. My son has been to schoolies and has also volunteered with the Red Frogs. Last year he went up to the Gold Coast and hung out with Andy and his team and saw the work that they do, and I was so impressed to hear about it and now to talk to him more. I love the idea of the pancakes and of course the Red Frogs, and how it has to be that lolly. I loved what he said about they tried different lollies but it just didn't work. Bananas just doesn't quite have that same ring. Musk sticks. Red Frogs Australia and Allen's helps more than 1.2 million young people and provide more than 3 million red lollies to start those conversations that Andy was talking about. I'm also really cheered about what he said about that idea of social justice and how there's a real difference, you know. It's not just about laughing at your mate and then keeping on partying. It's actually about saying, okay, I'm going to be the designated driver. I'm going to be the one that takes my mate to the Red Frogs tent and makes sure that he gets assisted, and I'm going to stay with him. I'm not just going to pass him off and make him someone else's problem or her. I loved that. I think this is really awesome, and I loved about the game of Uno, how that's what they're playing lots of things because their kids are drinking less. Isn't that encouraging? Less drinking at schoolies, more eating pancakes and Red Frogs. If you want all of our podcasts in one place, maybe you are going to schoolies, maybe you should just, if you've got a kid that's going to schoolies, download the Mamma Mia podcast app. If things are a bit boring and you don't have a game of cards to play, just pop in your earbuds, listen to a Mamma Mia podcast. If you download the Mamma Mia podcast app, it will always be with you and you will never be bored. You can also find us on Spotify and in the iTunes store. And if you could send this podcast to someone that you think might appreciate it, we would appreciate you doing that, because it's how we spread the love and spread the word of podcasts around, and it helps us keep making our shows. If you want to buy my book, we weren't talking about books, we were talking about podcasts, but I did write a book, and sometimes people ask me if they can buy it, because with books, there are so many books that get released and you tend to only be, front and centre in bookstores for a limited amount of time. But any of the books we talk about on the show, and of course all our podcasts, you can find at apple.co/mamamia. If you want to suggest another guest, like Andy, or just ask me a question, you can call the pod phone and leave a message on 02 8999 9386, or you can flick us an email at podcast@mamamia.com.au. Today's show was produced by Eliza Ratliff, who's eaten too many red frogs, for the Mamma Mia Women's Network. I'm Mia Friedman, and I will see you on the internets.